Chapter 1381. He stood at the entrance of Martial Union and coldly said, "Senior Mu has already said that Miss Cheng is no longer his disciple. Miss Cheng, don't call him master anymore." Cheng Mingyue's heart turned cold. She knew that sometimes, the attitude of the person serving beside you was an indication of the master's attitude. Looking at this person's appearance, her master and senior brother were really not going to give her any face? Cheng Mingyue only felt a chill in her heart. In any case, they had been master and disciple for more than 10 years. Yet, at this time they could actually bear to see her like this. Cheng Mingyue had never thought about what kind of relationship she had talked about when she pointed at Mu Qingfeng and said those words last night. Thus, it could be said that the selfish people in this world all had the same characteristic. They would always remember the bad things of others, but could not see the good things of others and their own bad things. No matter what kind of thought she had in her heart, Cheng Mingyue still put on a pale face on the surface. She gritted her teeth and said, "Since master and senior brother are not willing to forgive Mingyue, and Mingyue has already lost her father, now that I'm going to lose my master and senior brother, what's the point of living in this world?" As she spoke, she acted as if she was going to crash into a stone pillar at the side. "Stop, Miss Cheng." Song Ren still had that cold look on his face. He looked at Cheng Mingyue, his gaze devoid of any warmth. "If Miss Cheng wants to die, please find another place. If you kill yourself in front of Martial Union's entrance, those who don't know will think that Martial Union is bullying you and do something to you." Cheng Mingyue's body was grabbed by two people. She looked at Song Ren, who was standing at the entrance, in disbelief. She was already in this state, so why was this man still so indifferent? She could not help but touch her face suspiciously. There was nothing wrong with it? She shouted without care, "You! Why won't you let me see my master and senior brother? What are you trying to do?" "Miss Cheng." Song Ren's face finally sank. The way he looked at Cheng Mingyue was as if he was looking at something filthy. "Miss Cheng, do you need me to remind you what kind of disrespectful words you said last night in front of all the martial artists?" His gaze was so cold that Cheng Mingyue couldn't help but shudder. Her arrogance unconsciously weakened. That's just because I was too sad and didn't mean it." "Unintentional words." Song Ren sneered. "I'm afraid these unintentional words are Miss Cheng's true heartfelt words?" He then instructed his subordinates, "All of you, stand guard at the entrance. If Miss Cheng wishes to seek death, stop her. Do not dirty my Martial Union's land. Of course, once Martial Union is out of the picture, it is none of our business." After he finished speaking, he turned around and left with a flick of his sleeves, as if he didn't want to see this repulsive woman again. It was only then that Cheng Mingyue was truly exhausted. Master and senior brother really wouldn't care about him anymore. She had never been so clear about this matter. She turned around and saw the way the crowd looked at her for the first time. What she saw in front of her eyes made her widen her eyes. It was not the sympathetic and pitiful look she thought it was, but the real mockery and sarcasm. These people were all laughing at her. Chapter 1382. Cheng Mingyue stared at these people with wide eyes. Among these people, she recognized some of them, but she did not recognize the majority of them. However, these people, without exception, were all looking at her with malicious gazes. Cheng Mingyue tried her best to maintain the demeanor of a martial arts family's young miss and coldly said, "Everyone, hitting someone when they're down isn't something a real man would do, right?" It would have been better if she did not say this. The moment these words left her mouth, some people in the crowd sneered. "So Miss Cheng also knows what a real man is? I thought Miss Cheng didn't even know how to write the word shame." Shame is such a complicated word. How would Miss Cheng know? I think she probably doesn't even recognize words like face, right? I heard the words she said last night clearly. If I had such a disciple, I would have cleaned up the sect on the spot. How could I allow her to jump around again today? Isn't that so? She was already expelled from the sect yesterday, and today, she came here acting pitiful as if nothing had happened. She even threatened to kill herself. Miss Cheng, let me advise you. If you really want to die, Go home and do it. Don't put on an act here. Every sentence was like a sharp knife stabbing into Chang Mingyue's heart. It wasn't like this. Why were these people looking at her with such gazes? Why were they saying such cold and heartless words to her? Shouldn't they be looking at her tears, lamenting in their hearts, and facing a common enemy with her? Chang Mingyue could not bear such gazes. She felt that she could not stay here any longer. She could only cover her face with her sleeves and hurriedly leave. Seeing that there was no more drama to watch, the crowd surrounding the entrance of Martial Arts Union dispersed. Chang Mingyue was secretive all the way home because she realized that people were pointing at her and whispering to each other on the way home. Chang Mingyue, who had never experienced such humiliation before, only wanted to return home and close the door, not letting anyone see her. However, before she reached home, she saw her personal maid, Xiao Tang. Why did Xiao Tang come out? She felt strange. When Xiao Tang saw her, it was as if she saw her savior. "Miss, you're finally back." Chang Mingyue faintly had a bad feeling. What's wrong? Xiao Tang's eyes were filled with tears. Our residence's main doors have all been smashed. Chang Mingyue was infuriated when she heard this. The gate was the face of a mansion. Who had such a huge grudge against the Cheng family? Who did it? Xiao Tang's tone was evasive. This servant saw that there were many people. Cheng Mingyue glanced at it and didn't say anything. She hurried back home. From afar, she saw the smashed door of her house and many people surrounding it. "Miss, don't go there." Xiao Tang tugged at her sleeve uneasily. Cheng Mingyue felt that something was wrong. She turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" Xiao Tang bit her lips and said, "Those people came to cause trouble for young Mississippi." This servant heard them scolding young Miss. Chang Mingyue's heart skipped a beat. What are they cursing about? Xiao Tang's tone became even more cautious. They scolded Miss, deceived their master and betrayed their ancestors. Ungrateful, pigs and dogs. She didn't dare to finish her sentence. However, these few were enough to deal a blow to Cheng Mingyue. Her body swayed a little, but she couldn't resist the hesitation in her heart. It's over. It's over. This was the only feeling Cheng Mingyue had at this moment. She, Cheng Mingyue, was truly finished in the Central Plains pugilistic world. Chapter 1383. Cheng Mingyue was sick. This time, she wasn't pretending to be pitiful to gain sympathy. She was really sick. She hadn't been sick for a long time. Cheng Mingyue, who was lying on the bed in a daze because of the fever, thought in a daze. She was born as a proud daughter of heaven. Her father treated her like a pearl and raised her. He was very nervous about the slightest disturbance. How could he give her a chance to fall sick? Later, she became the disciple of the #1 expert in the martial arts world and the junior sister of the chief of the martial arts world. More people flattered her. She thought of the last time she fell sick. It was a few years ago. It was just a small cold. The servants in the mansion were busy. Her father looked at her tirelessly. He even invited a few famous doctors in the martial arts world. In the martial arts world, who didn't envy her, Fairy Mingyue? But now, Xiao Tang came in with a bowl of black medicine. She looked helpless. "Young miss, those doctors heard that the master of the Chang mansion was sick and refused to come over. This is the medicine for typhoid that I bought myself. Please be more particular." When she came in with the bowl of medicine, Cheng Mingyue clearly saw a few red and swollen blisters on Xiao Tang's hands. "You brewed this medicine yourself? Where are those rough servants?" Cheng Mingyue asked angrily. Xiao Tang avoided her gaze and said timidly, "Ever since the master passed away, the servants in the house ran away and ransomed. Now. She didn't finish her sentence, but Cheng Mingyue already knew what she meant. Now, there were probably not many people in the Cheng mansion. Cheng Mingyue's expression suddenly calmed down. She took the bowl of medicine and drank it. "I know. I don't need anyone to serve me. You can go and rest." Xiao Tang left. Cheng Mingyue watched her leave. Xiaotang had been by her side since she was young. She was a servant who served the young miss. Naturally, she had never done any heavy work. Today was probably the first time she brewed medicine. She lay on the bed and looked at the top of the bed with her eyes wide open. Tears finally fell from the corners of her eyes and slowly soaked the pillow. Something big happened in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. At the Martial Arts World Assembly, the current chief of the martial arts world, Zhu Yu, revealed a shocking news. He and the cult master of the devil cult were in love with each other and were about to get married. I am aware that I am no longer able to assume the position of Wulin Alliance Master, and I would like to ask my fellow Wulin Alliance Masters to choose another Wulin Alliance Master who is of virtue and prestige. If it was any other day, if someone exposed that they had an affair with the cult master of the devil sect, they would be condemned by the public. However, Zhu Yu had accumulated a lot of prestige and was highly respected by the people of Wulin. Moreover, his actions were too calm, so calm that no one could criticize his actions. He had fallen in love with the cult leader of the devil cult, and had volunteered not to be the Wulin Union head. What could you do to him? As a result, the martial arts circle convention ended in an extremely strange atmosphere. What was most shocking was that Zhu Yu had actually used his own name to send out invitations to all the martial artists present when the martial arts tournament ended. Wasn't he afraid of triggering a murder case? Many of the martial artists were dumbfounded by Zhu Yu's unusual approach. Yi Li, I'm sorry. Zhu Yu held Gu Xingyin's hand and apologized. Gu Xingyin turned to look at him. What's there to be sorry about? Zhu Yu looked apologetic. I said that I would give you a lively and grand wedding. However, in the martial arts world of the Central Plains, I'm afraid our wedding won't receive many blessings. Chapter 1384. After all, the martial arts world in the Central Plains had been holding a grudge against the demon sect for a long time, and it was not easy to erase it. Gu Xingyin laughed out loud. I thought you had done something wrong to me. Just this small matter? Marriage is just a matter between two people. How big of an impact would it have on us whether other people give us their blessings or not? Zhu Yu laughed as well. You're right. It doesn't matter if other people give us their blessings or not, we will still grow old together. The location of their wedding was one of Mu Qingfeng's big houses. This was specially requested by Mu Qingfeng. By doing so, he was showing the world that he was not dissatisfied with the marriage between his disciple and the demon sect's leader. In fact, he even approved of it. The number of guests at the wedding was much more than what Zhu Yu had expected. First of all, there was the demon sect. Although the members of the demon sect were not satisfied with the fact that their leader's wedding was not held at the demon sect's headquarters, they still sent a large group of people to attend their leader's wedding. Just the disciples of the demonic sect alone were enough to cause a great commotion. Not to mention the people from the martial arts world who had accepted Zhu Yu's invitation. Initially, they were all in a wait-and-see mode. However, after a while, they thought that it would be good to take this opportunity to see the legendary demon sect. Besides, there would definitely be many people who would not go because of their status. If they went, wouldn't they be able to impress Mu Qingfeng and hero Zhu Yu? Perhaps there were other reasons too. All in all, when the wedding started, the tables and chairs prepared by Zhu Yu were almost not enough. Fortunately, there were backups. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing. However, Zhu Yu was happy. No matter what these people were thinking, at least on the surface, they were here to give their blessings to him and Yi Li. Look, there are so many people giving us their blessings when we are together. He whispered in Gu Xingyin's ear. Gu Xingyin looked at the man who was lying through his teeth. She thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Those people were here to attend the wedding. Weren't they here to give their blessings? As for those who came for the demon sect's leader, they finally saw her in person. The moment they saw Gu Xingyin, they all understood why Alliance leader Zhu Yu liked such a woman. Nonsense. Which man wouldn't like such a beauty? What? You're not moved by her beauty? Bullshit. Usually, if a man said that he was not moved by beauty, it was only because he had someone he loved. Most of the time, it was because that beauty was not beautiful enough to attract him. It was no wonder that the former junior sister of the Wulin Alliance Master would be jealous. The female guests present sighed inwardly as they looked at the bride's face, which was even more beautiful than the lights and moonlight. Such beauty was simply every woman's nightmare. Gu Shengyin and Zhu Yu didn't care about what the guests were thinking. They were just devoutly following the ancient ceremony and bowing to the heavens and earth. Then, under the blessings of everyone, they became a true husband and wife. The moonlight tonight was very beautiful, but to Zhu Yu, everything in front of him had lost its color and luster. In his eyes, there was only the person smiling sweetly in front of him. He looked at Gu Shengyin with satisfaction, his face full of tenderness and joy. "Yi Li, I finally have you by my side." Gu Shengyin smiled faintly. "Silly, my heart has been firmly tied to your body since a long, long time ago." Continue to update. Please vote, order, read, comment, give, tip. Highlight the main points. Tomorrow is the new world. Good night, everyone. Chapter 1385. Cheng Mingyue lay on the bed and vaguely heard the sound of music. A strange feeling rose in her heart. Xiaotang, is there someone holding a wedding outside? She had been lying in bed for a long time and her illness was not getting better. For such a long time, the only person she had seen was Xiaotang. Those ungrateful people saw that she was in dire straits and all of them wanted to climb up the social ladder. Thinking of this, Cheng Mingyue was angry. As for Xiaotang, who had always stayed by his side and never abandoned him, his heart was filled with gratitude. Xiaotang heard her words and showed a complicated expression. She lowered her head and did not speak. Seeing her like this, Cheng Mingyue was even more certain that something was going on. She said, "Xiaotang, tell me the truth. What's going on?" Xiaotang lowered her head and said quickly, "Miss, today is Hero Zhu Yu's big day." Zhu Yu's big day? Cheng Mingyue was in a daze for a moment before she realized that Zhu Yu was her senior brother. He was actually getting married? Cheng Mingyue suddenly thought of something and asked sternly, "Who is the bride?" When she said this, a beautiful face flashed in her mind, but she quickly rejected it. It was impossible. Senior brother was the chief of Wulin. How could he marry someone from the devil sect? Hero Zhu Yu's new wife. She is the leader of the devil sect. Xiaotang's voice broke her imagination. Hearing the words leader of the devil sect, Cheng Mingyue suddenly became agitated. Who did you say his bride is? The leader of the devil sect? How is that possible? Senior brother is the chief of Wulin. He can't marry someone who is the leader of the devil sect. Xiaotang said softly, but Hero Zhu Yu is no longer the chief of Wulin. What did you say? Cheng Mingyue turned her head and looked at Xiaotang. Say it again? Xiaotang lowered her head and said softly, Hero Zhu Yu said himself that he is no longer capable of being the chief of Wulin. He has already resigned. Now the Wulin is discussing who will take over as the chief of Wulin. The room fell silent for a moment. After a while, a mournful laughter rang out in the dark room. Ha 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 ha, my good senior brother, for her, he even gave up the honor of being the Wulin Alliance's leader. What am I? Then what am I? Cough 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 cough. Xiaotang looked at her worriedly and comforted her softly. Miss, please take care of yourself. You? A bowl of medicine came crashing down and landed right on Xiaotang's forehead. Get lost, all of you. A stinging sensation rose from the place where he was hit. He didn't know if his skin was broken. Xiaotang lowered her eyes and did not say anything. She picked up the bowl on the ground and left. Cheng Mingyue spent the whole afternoon staring at the ceiling in a daze. She didn't know what she was thinking. She hadn't looked in the mirror for a long time, because she was afraid of seeing her hideous appearance. Young miss, this servant has made some porridge. Would you like to have some? Xiaotang pushed open the door and walked in with a tray. Cheng Mingyue turned to look at her. This servant girl was the only one who was still loyal to her after her downfall. Cheng Mingyue thought for a moment and reached out to take the porridge from Xiaotang's hands. She picked up the spoon and drank 2 mouthfuls. There was minced meat in the porridge. It was obvious that it was stewed with care. It tasted fresh and fragrant. Cheng Mingyue smiled at Xiao Tang and said, "Xiao Tang, thank you so much for all this time." Xiao Tang lowered her eyes and did not say anything. Cheng Mingyue wanted to say something, but she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Chapter 1386. Cheng Mingyue no longer had the strength to hold the bowl of porridge in her hand. The white and sticky porridge spilled onto the blanket. If it was any other time, Xiao Tang would have quickly gotten up to wipe it off. But right now she just stood there and watched, not moving at all. Cheng Mingyue felt a sharp pain in her stomach, as if there were countless sharp weapons twisting inside. She raised her head with cold sweat and looked in disbelief at Xiao Tang, who was quietly standing at the side with her head bowed. "You poisoned me?" Xiao Tang did not make a sound, nor did she deny it. Dark red blood flowed down from the corner of Cheng Mingyue's mouth. She did not use her hand to wipe it away because there was no end to it. She just stared at Xiao Tang and asked, "Why?" She thought that even if she fell into such a situation, there would still be someone by her side who would not leave her. She even thought that when her body was better, she would sell this residence and take Xiao Tang to live somewhere else. However, no matter how much she thought about it, she would never have thought that Xiao Tang would actually poison her. "Why?" Xiao Tang raised her head. Cheng Mingyue saw that her eyes were deathly still. These days, there was no one to take care of Father Cheng. The servants either ran away or left. In the end, there was only this servant left. Xiao Tang stretched out her hand for Cheng Mingyue to see. Cheng Mingyue saw that her fair palm was full of potholes and bruises, and even broken skin. Someone once asked Xiao Tang to leave with them. Xiao Tang could not bear to see young miss lying in bed alone without anyone to take care of you, so Xiao Tang did not go with them. "Look at these hands. This servant has to cook for you and wipe you down every day. I also have to worry about people with bad intentions coming to rob this residence. During the day, I have to clean up the trash and discarded items in this residence. But what did Xiao Tang get in return? It was you who beat and scolded me." Xiao Tang still had a calm expression. In Cheng Mingyue's eyes, this expression was even more terrifying than a face full of anger. A person with no desires was often the most terrifying. Cheng Mingyue felt her body gradually losing strength. Her mind was already a bit dizzy. She showed a smile and tried to make herself seem more sincere. "Xiao Tang, I know I was wrong. I will definitely treat you well in the future. Can you give me the antidote first?" Xiao Tang raised her head and suddenly showed a smile. "No, there is no antidote for this. Young miss, you can rest in peace." Cheng Mingyue's eyes widened as the pain in her abdomen reached its limit. She couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood and fell down powerlessly. Xiao Tang looked at this scene coldly. She walked forward and adjusted Cheng Mingyue's posture before tucking her in. From afar, Cheng Mingyue looked as though she had fallen asleep. After that, she turned around and left the room without hesitation. When Gu Shangyin received the system's message, it was at an unspeakable moment. Zhu Yu gasped when she saw how agitated she was. "What's wrong with you?" He bit Gu Shangyin's ear as if punishing her. Gu Shangyin shook his head, and his arms tightened around her neck to make himself close to her. "It's all right." Feeling her enthusiasm, Zhu Yu curled the corners of his mouth and bent down. It was the wedding night, the time when the mandarin ducks intertwined their necks. Gu Shangyin threw those irrelevant things to the back of her mind and concentrated on enjoying the passion brought by her lover. The red candles in the bridal chamber burned until dawn. Chapter 1387. When Gu Shangyin woke up in the morning, she saw that Zhu Yu was already awake. He was propping himself up and playing with a strand of her hair. "How are you feeling?" He knew that he had been a little reckless last night. He did not know if he had hurt her. Gu Shangyin shook her head. Zhu Yu sat up and placed Gu Shangyin's head on his thigh. He slowly combed her smooth black hair. I have already told my master that I will go to the demon sect with you tomorrow. Gu Shengyin closed her eyes comfortably. Are you in such a hurry? Zhu Yu smiled. Of course. I am still waiting for you to give me a grand wedding and marry me as your wife. Gu Shengyin opened her eyes and stared at the man on top of her. Are you serious? Zhu Yu leaned over and kissed her gently on her ear. Of course it's true. Gu Shengyin smiled. Okay. She knew what Zhu Yu meant. As the leader of the demon sect, she had gone to the Central Plains to hold a wedding. Although many disciples of the demon sect attended the wedding, they were not convinced. Zhu Yu was doing this for her sake. What else could she ask for after having such a husband? Zhu Yu and Gu Shengyin stayed together for a lifetime. After they got married, they spent most of their time at Mount Wu. It was not that no one had ever asked Zhu Yu to come back and be the leader of the Wulin Alliance, but Zhu Yu refused. Perhaps power was something extremely important to many men in this world. However, in his eyes, it could not be compared to a dish cooked by Yi Li. Zhu Yu left the world a little earlier than Gu Shengyin. When he left, his eyes were filled with guilt. I am sorry, Yi Li. I should have held on for a little longer. He did not want to leave this world so early. If he left, Yi Li would be left alone in this world. The dead would end everything, but the one who was still alive was often the one who suffered the most. Gu Shengyin held his hand and smiled gently. It is okay. We will meet again soon. Zhu Yu, we will be together forever. Zhu Yu closed his eyes reluctantly. Gu Shengyin personally buried him on Mount Wudu, a place she had chosen long ago. When she was burying Zhu Yu, she said to the disciple beside her, After I leave a place for me here. She pointed at a place not far from Zhu Yu's grave. When the disciple heard this, a sad expression appeared on his face, but he nodded and didn't say anything. He knew how deep his master's relationship with Senior Zhu Yu was. Senior Zhu Yu's departure had most likely taken his master's life with her. Sure enough, from that day onwards, Gu Shengyin, who had always been in good health, began to deteriorate rapidly. Within a short span of 10 days, she was already unable to get out of bed. She looked at the sad appearance of the disciple beside the bed, and only smiled gently and told him not to be sad. She didn't have any regrets, nor did she have any reluctance. Just like what that disciple had thought, she should have left when Zhu Yu left. She closed her eyes peacefully. When she opened her eyes again, she was already back in the pure white space. Gu Shengyin secretly felt the power in her body, and a satisfied smile appeared on her face. Her body was simply like a perfect vessel. No matter how much spiritual energy had been boosted by the laws of the world, her body was like a bottomless pit that would devour all this energy and turn it into her own. Let's go to the next mission world. She couldn't wait to see the world outside this space. Finishing sprinkling flowers. Carrot oh carrot. Chapter 1388. This was a very quiet space. It was very dark and very quiet. Even the wind did not dare to disturb this place. A black figure stood quietly in this dark space. She wore a thick black cloak, and a large hood hid her entire face in the shadows. Outside the wide black sleeve of her right hand, there was a hand wearing a black hood, holding a huge black sickle. The sickle was also pure black, as if any light between heaven and earth would be swallowed by the darkness when it fell on its body, not refracting any trace of light. Every time this sickle appeared, it symbolized death. Its master was the Grim Reaper of the underworld. At this moment, Gu Shengyin was looking up at the strange blood moon in the sky. System, transmit the plot. Soon, the massive plot of the world directly entered her mind. Gu Shengyin facepalmed. Ever since her soul became strong enough, the system had become not gentle at all in certain aspects. For example, during memory transfer. She still remembered that in the beginning, every time the memory was transferred, the system would be very gentle and slow, and would very considerately ask her if she felt uncomfortable. But now, it was simply and crudely packaged and transmitted all at once. Even if her divine soul was strong enough to not suffer any damage, she would still be stunned, okay? However, it was only for a moment. To Gu Shangyin, the mission was the most important thing. She began to slowly organize the plot. The Grim Reaper of this world would come to everyone's side when they were about to die and bring their souls to the underworld. Then, he would send them back to the afterlife or to some other end. When most people knew that they were about to die, they might feel fear, relief, or unwillingness. However, in the face of fate, no one could escape. Even the Grim Reaper was only doing her job. She may be able to force a person who was supposed to be dead to stay in this world, but the price she would have to pay was not something she could afford. Logically speaking, in this world, the original owner was the Grim Reaper. Furthermore, this was a modern world. Basically, the original owner was dealing with humans. Then, why did Gu Shangyin come to this world? Gu Shangyin saw the answer. This answer, Gu Shangyin was silent for a while before asking with uncertainty, "System, are you sure you're not joking?" As a deity, he was actually killed by a human woman. That human woman came from a wealthy family. She didn't have to do anything, and her wealth was more than enough for her to spend in 10 lifetimes. Such a person would naturally like to find some excitement in his life. She had been to things like bungee jumping, diving, and even the North Pole. These things could only give her a sense of excitement for a while, and then she would start to feel that the world was really boring. Until she knew about the existence of the Grim Reaper. A terrifying thought surfaced in her mind: God slaying. Just thinking about it made her so excited that she couldn't sleep. She began a long preparation. And the Grim Reaper was completely unaware of all of this. That crazy woman had caught an innocent passerby and shot him to death. Then, the Grim Reaper sensed that there was a soul in need of guidance and rushed over. He fell right into the woman's trap. Chapter 1389. After Gu Shangyin finished reading the story of this world, she felt that it was all a bit ridiculous. Was there really such a crazy person in this world? Was there really someone in this world who could kill a god? The system gave her an answer. Gu Shangyin looked at the pile of information that suddenly appeared in her mind. There were all sorts of crazy people in it. She took a deep breath and said, "I understand." As for killing a god, although it sounded ridiculous, it was undeniable that that woman did it. Extracting skills. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining perfect acting skills. Gu Shangyin. She didn't say anything. Instead, she immediately pulled out the life and death record of the supporting female lead, He Qing. When she saw it, her eyes widened. Are you kidding me? A lifetime of riches and honor, and a lifespan of 80? The system nodded heavily. Host, you didn't make a mistake. Gu Shangyin didn't understand. How could someone like her have such a good life? She started flipping through He Qing's records and found the reason. It turned out that in her previous life, He Qing was a world-famous philanthropist. However, her ending wasn't very good. She was betrayed by her husband, her only child was kidnapped and killed by someone who hated her. She spent her last years alone. When she reincarnated, the Lord of the Underworld asked her what she wanted because she had a lot of merit on her. He Qing laughed and said, "If there's a next life, I want to be a carefree person. Also, I don't want to be a good person anymore." Even if He Qing did evil in this life, she would pay for it in the next life. The merit she had accumulated in her previous life was enough for her to live a lifetime of riches and honor. Gu Shangyin closed the record book in her hand and asked, "Can't I ignore the records in this record book and deal with He Qing?" The system nodded, "Yes, host. Also, even if you deal with her, unless you do it directly, you might not get the result you want. However, if you do it directly, it will go against the Grim Reaper's professional ethics." Gu Shangyin had never received such a depressing task. "So what you're saying is that I can't do anything to her, and I still have to guard against her attacking me?" Gu Shangyin felt as if there were several mythical beasts living in her heart. The system replied, "That's right. Gu Shangyin, that He Qing is really something. I'm so angry, but I still have to maintain my smile. No, my indifference." The Grim Reaper had no emotions, so she would always have only one expression, an expressionless face. At this time, The record book in Gu Xingyin's left hand suddenly flashed with a white light. This meant that a new soul was about to appear, or had already appeared. Gu Xingyin had something to do. Let's go. Her figure blurred in an instant and disappeared from this space in the blink of an eye. This was a hospital. Gu Xingyin slowly walked in from the main entrance. The entire hospital hall was filled with people, but no one could see this person who was dressed differently. Gu Xingyin was not afraid of being seen. The living could not see the Grim Reaper. Only those who were about to die could see her. And to the dying, she had no need to hide. She walked straight into a ward. Compared to the hustle and bustle downstairs, this place was very quiet and the environment was very good. There was only one patient in the entire ward. Obviously, this person's family was very well off. Chapter 1390. This was a man with a thin face, about 40 years old. Judging from his neatly trimmed nails and neat appearance, he was well taken care of even in the hospital. Now, there was an oxygen tube at the tip of his nose. He looked at the light on the ceiling quietly. It was very quiet in the ward. There was no one else here. Gu Xingyin floated in. That's right, from a human's point of view, her feet didn't move. Instead, she glided in parallel and came directly in front of the man. She looked down at the man in front of her. The other party obviously saw her. Gu Xingyin saw the look of horror on his face at a glance. Any normal person would be scared when they suddenly saw such a strangely dressed person by their bedside. Don't be afraid. I'm here to guide you. A cold voice sounded in the man's mind. Who are you? The man felt strange after he asked. Because he didn't speak. As early as half a month ago, he couldn't speak anymore. The sentence just now was just a thought in his mind. However, he clearly made a sound and communicated with the strange person in front of him. The man looked at Gu Xingyin's appearance and the very unique sickle in her hand. Suddenly, he thought of something. His pale face became even paler. He thought that he already knew who the other party was. Am I dying? He asked softly. What answered him was still the same cold voice. The living can't see me. After knowing Gu Xingyin's identity, the man calmed down. He thought for a moment and asked, How long do I have? Gu Xingyin glanced at the record book in her hand. 10 minutes. The man's face showed a relieved expression. He asked, I don't have any strength now, but I want to see my daughter before I die. Can you press the call bell for me? As soon as he said this, he suddenly felt as if something cold had entered his body. His body, which had been weak since he fell ill, was suddenly full of strength. It reminded him of a long time ago when he was very healthy. A healthy person would never understand such a feeling. At that moment, the man even had the urge to cry. He got up on his own and pulled out the oxygen tube at the tip of his nose. There were only 10 minutes left. He didn't care about these things anymore. The man smiled at Gu Xingyin, then turned to press the call button beside the bed. The nurse quickly walked in. The man looked at her. She didn't even care about the Grim Reaper standing beside her. Instead, she looked at him in surprise. Mr. Yuan, why did you pull out the oxygen tube? Also, you look good today. The nurse suddenly stopped talking halfway through her sentence. She glanced at the man who was half sitting on the bed with a rare trace of red on his cheeks. Suddenly, a wave of bitterness rushed to the tip of her nose. She was very clear about Mr. Hara's condition. It was impossible for him to suddenly get better, unless he was experiencing terminal lucidity. The man had been very quiet. Suddenly, he said, Is Xiao Ling in the hospital? I want to see her. He divorced his wife 7 years ago, and their only daughter, Xiao Ling, was awarded to him. Chapter 1391. The nurse nodded and said, Xiao Ling has been accompanying you. She went downstairs to buy fruits for you. Just as the nurse finished speaking, a high school girl with a ponytail walked in. She was both surprised and happy to see the man sitting on the bed. She pounced on the bed and said, Dad, you're awake? The man smiled and nodded. He reached out and touched his daughter's long black hair. Xiao Ling has lost weight recently. Xiao Ling used to be impatient with such nagging until her father was hospitalized. He was in a coma more than he was awake, so he didn't have the energy to discipline her anymore. Only after her father got sick did Xiao Ling realize that being nagged by her father was a kind of happiness. She smiled and nodded. When Dad recovers, I'll make braised pork shoulder and stew old hen soup for Xiao Ling. I'll make Xiao Ling fat again. The man smiled and didn't say anything. He suddenly asked, "Have you been to see your mother recently?" Xiao Ling's face fell. She has a family and a child now. Why would I be in her way? It was obvious that she didn't have a good relationship with her birth mother. The man was anxious. His parents had passed away early, and he didn't have any siblings. If he left just like that, Xiao Ling would definitely be with her mother. He advised, "After all, she's your mother. I think she's always missed you. Xiao Ling, you can't be willful in the future." Xiao Ling blinked and looked at him. "I have Dad. Dad dotes on me. Mom has a family and a child. Dad only has me." The man almost burst into tears when she said that. He suppressed his bitterness and looked at his daughter. "Xiao Ling, be good. Dad can't always be with you." His expression was too obvious, and the teenage girl seemed to have realized something. Her eyes turned red. "No. Dad will always be with Xiao Ling. I don't want to find Mom. I want Dad." She hugged the man's waist tightly, as if the man wouldn't leave her like this. Gu Shengyin watched this scene calmly. There were only 3 minutes left. The nurse couldn't help crying. Only the man still looked calm. He gently stroked his daughter's head, his eyes filled with reluctance. "Xiao Ling, no matter where I am, I will always be watching over you." The daughter in his arms had already lost her voice from crying. She only knew how to hug his waist and shake her head continuously. It was as if she wouldn't be able to hear her father's words and wouldn't have to accept such an outcome. The nurse suddenly came forward and said, "Mr. Yuan, I'll give you another examination now." She knew it was futile, but she still wanted to do something. The man shook his head and looked at the nurse. "I know my own body. There's no need to trouble yourself." When he said this, his expression was very calm, as if what he was about to face was not that difficult to accept. 1.5 minutes left. The man began to find it difficult to breathe. He tried his best to make himself look fine and said to the daughter in his arms, "Xiao Ling, you have to listen to Daddy. Don't be willful in the future. Go to Mommy and listen to her. Also, in the cupboard in your room, there are things that Dad left for you. You have to keep them well and don't let others know about them easily." His consciousness was starting to blur. In the end, he looked at his daughter in his arms and said his last words in this world. "Daddy loves you." Chapter 1392. Gu Shengyin stood in the room and watched as the girl hugged her father's lifeless body and cried until she was out of breath. Beside her stood a man who looked exactly like the man on the hospital bed. It was Mr. Yuan's soul. At this moment, the man, who had been holding back his tears, looked at his daughter and cried miserably with red eyes. Gu Shengyin gave him some time to take one last look at this world. The man stayed in the ward and watched as his daughter hugged his stiff body tightly and refused to let go. In the end, she was forcefully pulled away by the hospital staff. "It's time to go," Gu Shengyin said coldly. The man wanted to stay a little longer, but there seemed to be some kind of attraction on the god of death in front of him, which made him involuntarily follow her forward. Sensing the man's resistance, Gu Shengyin said coldly, "Human, you're dead now. The human world has nothing to do with you anymore. Even if you stand in front of your daughter now, she can't see you." The man's eyes were still red, but his tears had stopped. He said bitterly, "It's okay if Xiao Ling can't see me. I just want to see her more." Gu Shengyin's reply was to raise the sickle in her hand high and slash at the sky. In the man's eyes, it was like a scene from a fantasy movie. The empty sky was cut open by the sickle, and a grey door of light opened in front of the two people, no, a god of death and a ghost. He followed Gu Shengyin into the door. When he stepped through the door, he seemed to have sensed something and turned around to look behind him. But it was only a glance. In the next second, he was sucked into the grey door by a huge attraction. Gu Shengyin glanced at the man who had become expressionless after entering the underworld and said, "Follow me." The man obediently followed her and walked forward, completely without the previous tangled look. This was the underworld. As long as a mortal soul entered the underworld, all of its emotions and desires would be purified, and it would become a brand new soul. After that, the gods in the underworld would arrange the next reincarnation according to the merits of their previous lives. Gu Shengyin brought him to a place where many souls like this man were standing. After bringing him here, the death god wouldn't be in charge of the rest. The Grim Reaper was only responsible for bringing souls into the underworld. As for reincarnation and the like, there were naturally other gods in charge. She flipped through the record book. In the next few days, there were no souls that she needed to be responsible for. Gu Shengyin closed the thing in his hand and sat down under a red maple tree in the underworld in a daze. She didn't know what to do. The Grim Reaper did not have human emotions and did not need to rest. Her only job was to guide the dead. When the Grim Reaper had nothing to do for the time being, he would sit under the red maple tree and stare blankly. The red maple tree was a plant that belonged to the underworld. From the roots to the branches to the leaves, everything was as red as blood. In this dark underworld, the red maple tree was the brightest color. Gu Shengyin soon felt bored. Because the Grim Reaper did not need to cultivate. It would be fine if she cultivated, but she would really sit here for an entire day. Chapter 1393. She felt that this wouldn't do. In the original plot, it only mentioned that the supporting female lead He Qing killed a god, but it didn't mention in detail how she killed a god. Although she couldn't do anything to her, she couldn't just sit there and wait for death. "System, I want to meet this He Qing," Gu Shengyin said. Her figure flashed, and she disappeared from the red maple tree. Gu Shengyin once again came to the human world. It was night time, and many office workers had finished their day's work and returned home to rest. Of course, there were also many young men and women who started their rich nightlife. He Qing belonged to the latter. She had money and time. The only thing she was worried about was how to play tonight, and how to spend money tomorrow. Gu Shengyin came to the entrance of a famous bar in the city. This bar was called A Crazy Night. It wasn't famous because of its atmosphere, but because of its chaos. Such a place, logically speaking, should have been closed down after the country's crackdown. But it wasn't. It was said that it had a strong backing, strong enough to ignore certain things. Gu Shengyin was still dressed the same way. Everyone ignored her, so she didn't feel burdened. It was indeed chaotic inside. Gu Shengyin stood quietly and looked at the stage where a few seductive women were performing a striptease. Below, many men were holding their female partners in their arms, but their eyes were lingering on the people on the stage. The lighting here was very dim, and the environment was very ambiguous. It was very suitable for doing certain things. But the dim environment didn't affect Gu Shengyin at all. She could clearly see that in a corner less than 2 meters away from her, a couple couldn't help but start a good show. In the entire hall, there were many men and women who couldn't wait to get a room. Gu Shengyin looked at all of this indifferently. Those erotic scenes were like wood in her eyes. They couldn't stir her heart at all. She was looking for her target. Found it. That woman was on the other side of the sofa. She was hugging an underage girl in her arms, and a very handsome and mature man was pouring wine for her. Gu Shengyin sized up He Qing carefully. She wasn't particularly beautiful, but she was very pleasing to the eye. Under the dim light, her exquisite and enchanting makeup made her look extremely seductive. Gu Shengyin clearly saw that when He Qing tilted her head back and down the wine in her glass, the man sitting beside her swallowed his saliva. Clearly, he was aroused. He Qing naturally noticed it. She looked at the man with her charming eyes. Her red lips curled up and she smiled slowly. "You want to take me?" Such a straightforward and vulgar conversation did not arouse the disgust of men. On the contrary, under such circumstances, it was easier to arouse their adrenaline. The man couldn't take his eyes off the woman. He nodded and said in a low voice, "Yes, I want you." In the next second, a glass of red wine was poured on his head. The man met He Ching's cold gaze. "Can't you see that I already have a little cutie? Get lost." A trace of anger flashed across the man's face, but he obviously knew He Ching's identity and was very afraid of her. In the end, he just snorted and left. As for He Ching, she lowered her head and looked at the beautiful young man in her arms. Her expression became as gentle as water. Gu Shengyin could clearly see that although the young man tried his best to smile, a trace of fear flashed across his eyes. Gu Shengyin, this woman was indeed a lunatic. Chapter 1394. Gu Shengyin lowered his head and thought about something. Then, he saw He Ching frowning and looking straight at him. Gu Shengyin's heart skipped a beat. She was sure that there was nothing in her direction. "System, are you sure that the mission target cannot see the Grim Reaper?" The system said, "Yes, only a dying person can see the Grim Reaper." Gu Shengyin felt that something was amiss. Could it be a coincidence? He Ching also felt that something was amiss. She felt that there was a gloomy and cold aura around her today. But she looked around and did not see anything. Could it be an illusion? She frowned and made a mental note of this. Seeing that He Ching had brought the beautiful young man into a room, Gu Shengyin, who had no interest in watching a live performance, did not follow them. She found the rooftop of a large building and slowly sat down to enjoy the night breeze. She did see that He Ching's body was surrounded by a faint layer of golden light. Gu Shengyin was very familiar with this golden light. It was the golden light of Narrate. This was the golden light of Narrate that He Ching had done in her previous life. It had been protecting her in this life. Thinking of this, she had a headache. Based on the amount of merit on He Ching, she would definitely have a smooth sailing life in this life. Even if she did something bad in this life, she would have to pay for it in her next life. She could not attack her at all. The best defense was offense. But this time, Gu Shengyin could only defend. She could only let the system watch He Ching's every move to prevent her from having any chance to attack her. Looking at the bustling city lights in the distance, Gu Shengyin's heart suddenly opened up. The system was puzzled. "Host, you've thought it through?" Gu Shengyin smiled. But this smile was hidden under the large cloak. Even the system did not see it. "So what? I can't attack her, so I'll just wait. A mortal's lifespan is only a few decades. So what if I hide from her for a few decades? As long as I can keep myself alive for the next few decades, I'll have completed the mission, right?" If the system knew that emoji packs existed in this world, it would look like this. Oaths. So you can think of it this way. My host is really smart. Gu Shengyin didn't say anything else. She said it so casually, but she felt that things weren't that simple. Otherwise, in the original plot, how could He Ching, who couldn't see the existence of the Grim Reaper, kill the Grim Reaper? "Are you the Grim Reaper?" A young but excited voice came from behind Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin turned around and looked at the little boy who had appeared behind her in surprise. He was probably 7 or 8 years old. He was wearing a white shirt and a small suit. He was so handsome that he looked like a little prince in a fairy tale. At this moment, the young prince was looking at a person in a black cloak not far away. This person's appearance was exactly the same as the Grim Reaper in the myths. Gu Shengyin was surprised. "You can see me?" At the same time, she asked the system. "What's going on?" The moment she saw the little boy, she subconsciously flipped through the record book in her hand. But there were no relevant records. Her lover was not recorded in the record book. The little boy tilted his head and looked at her. He felt that this person who looked like the Grim Reaper looked very familiar. He couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. "Why can't I see you?" Chapter 10. She would know whether she had advanced or not by this afternoon. It was up to the heavens. Good night, everyone. 3. Chapter 1395. Gu Shengyin looked at the little boy in front of her and suddenly said, "Don't come over." The little boy obediently stood still and did not move. Gu Shengyin carefully looked at his face and didn't find any death aura. In other words, he was different from those people who could see her. Those people could only see death gods like her because they were about to die, but the boy in front of her wasn't like that. While the system was looking for the reason for this situation, Gu Shengyin was also flipping through the death god's tens of thousands of years of memories. Finally, she found a possibility in a corner: Heaven's Eye. There was a group of people who were born with yin and yang eyes and could see ghosts and gods. Their eyes were called Heaven's Eye. People who had Heaven's Eye were good seedlings to cultivate Taoist magic. But in this era, Taoist magic was declining, so not many people paid attention to this. As for why his name wasn't in the record book, the system couldn't explain it. Gu Shengyin couldn't find any precedent. She looked at the boy and suddenly asked, "What's your name?" The little boy saw the mysterious death god talking to him and happily answered her, "My name is Qiao Zhihe." Qiao Zhihe looked at the person in front of him and felt very strange. He didn't know if the person in front of him was the legendary death god. Her appearance was exactly the same as the death god described in the book, but the book said that the death god was evil and terrifying. But he didn't feel any of this from this death god sister. He felt that this death god sister was very close. Gu Shengyin looked at the little boy who was looking at her with his grape-like eyes, and her mood softened. "What are you looking at?" she asked in a low voice. Qiao Zhihe stood there and seemed to be very embarrassed, but the desire in his eyes was very obvious. "Death god sister, can I touch your scythe?" His eyes were shining as he looked at the scythe in Gu Shengyin's right hand. It was really cool. Gu Shengyin casually said, "You can, but this is a magic tool from the underworld. Normal people can't touch it." Before she could finish her words, she saw Qiao Zhihe happily place his hand on her sickle. Gu Shengyin, "System, can you come out and explain?" After a while, the system said, "Host, this is beyond the scope of your authority." Gu Shengyin chuckled. One day, she would know everything that she wanted to know. "Young master." A terrified voice came from behind. Gu Shengyin and Qiao Zhihe turned their heads at the same time. A young man in a suit was looking at them with a face full of fear. In his eyes, his young master was standing very close to the edge of the rooftop and was even stretching out his hand to look outside. It was simply too dangerous. The young man in charge of Qiao Zhihe was so scared that his heart almost jumped out. Gu Shengyin glanced at him and knew what he was thinking. She suddenly said in a low voice, "My existence is a little secret between us. Little Crane, don't tell anyone, okay?" Children loved these little secret games the most. Qiao Zhihe nodded with a face full of excitement. "Yes. Little Crane will definitely not tell anyone. Daddy and Mommy won't tell either." "Young master, what are you talking about here alone?" The young man rushed over and didn't see Gu Shengyin standing at the side. He was talking endlessly with a face full of fear. Chapter 1396. Qiao Zhihe turned around and glanced at Gu Shengyin, feeling very strange in his heart. Sister Death was here, but Brother Ah How couldn't see her? He thought of his promise with Gu Shengyin, so he pursed his lips tightly and shook his head without saying anything. The young man called Ah How didn't ask any more questions. He just held his hand and walked back. "Sir and Madam are worried sick. Let's go back quickly." Qiao Zhihe was led by Ah How as he walked back. Gu Shengyin looked at him and suddenly waved her hand, making a goodbye gesture. Qiao Zhihe smiled and waved back. Then he saw the other party suddenly stand up. A pair of huge black wings stretched out from her back. She jumped and disappeared into the night sky. Qiao Zhihe's eyes widened. His eyes were full of splendor. That was really too cool. Then he was carried by Ah How. "Young master, the rooftop is not fun at all. It's very dangerous. In the future, you can't come here alone anymore." Gu Shengyin didn't actually leave. She just found a place where Qiao Zhihe couldn't see and then quietly followed. She saw Chao Zhihe being led by the young man called Ahau to a magnificent hall. There seemed to be a banquet being held inside. A well-dressed couple hurried over when they saw Chao Zhihe. Their expressions were filled with anxiety. They were Chao Zhihe's parents. She sat on the rooftop of another building far away, looking at the little child, and fell into deep thought. On the other side, Chao Zhihe seemed to be in a daze the whole night. His father sat beside him and poured a glass of juice for his son. "Xiao He, why don't you look happy at all?" Chao Zhihe raised his head, looking very serious. It was just that he wasn't even 7 years old and had a very cute baby fat on his face. His serious look made him look even cuter. Father Chao almost laughed out loud, but seeing his son like this, he held it back. He had to leave some face for the little boy. "Dad, I have a question," Chao Zhihe said. Father Chao was very patient. "What's wrong with little Crane?" Then he saw his son ask with sparkling eyes, "Is there a Grim Reaper in this world?" "Father Chao, have you read too many fairy tales?" But he certainly couldn't answer like that. Hence, Father Chao pretended to be deep in thought. When he lowered his head, he saw his son's nervous gaze. He couldn't help but laugh. "There's no Grim Reaper. That's all in fairy tales. Everyone's imagination." Although children needed to be coaxed, Father Chao didn't coax his son. His son's education was very important to him. There were some things that should be told the truth, so he tried his best not to replace it with lies. Chao Zhihe was a little disappointed. He really wanted to tell his father that he had seen a Grim Reaper tonight. She was like a fairy tale character, wearing a thick black cloak. Her face could not be seen clearly, and she held a huge black scythe in her hand. She was simply very handsome. Moreover, she wasn't as bad as what was written in the books. However, Chao Zhihe remembered the agreement between the two of them and decided to keep his little secret. He was the only one who could see Sister Death. Chapter 1397. After returning home, Chao Zhihe was severely taught a lesson by his parents. This lesson was actually that the two of them ignored him for the whole night, and no one said good night to him when he went to bed. And the reason was that Ahau told the two that the young master ran to the rooftop alone and walked to the edge of the area where there was no railing. God, that was more than 60 floors. The young couple was scared when they heard the news. At first, they thought that their son sneaked away because he was playful, but they didn't expect him to go to such a dangerous place. For this kind of thing, they naturally had to punish him well, so that he would remember it a little. Chao family couple couldn't punish their son physically. The two of them thought for a long time before coming up with such a method. Thus, the poor little bun Chao Zhihe was ignored. The young master felt wronged. He sat on the bed alone with his pillow. The curtains of the big floor-to-ceiling window were originally drawn, but he pulled the curtains open, and he could see the garden downstairs. Chao Zhihe understood why his parents ignored him. Because he didn't listen and ran to such a dangerous place alone. But Death Sister was there. He felt wronged and at a loss. If he didn't see Death Sister, he definitely wouldn't go to such an outside place. But he couldn't tell his parents, because he promised Death Sister that he wouldn't tell anyone else. Even if it was his parents, he couldn't. The little Chao Zhihe pouted. If only Death Sister was here, he could tell her. "What do you want to say to me?" A cold voice appeared in his bedroom. Chao Zhihe blinked and looked at the black figure in front of him. When did Death Sister appear? He had been sitting on the bed the whole time, but in an instant, Sister Death appeared beside his bed. Chao Zhihe's eyes widened, and he even forgot his sadness. Instead, he looked at Gu Shengyin with a face of surprise. "Death Sister, when did you come?" Gu Shengyin looked at him and wanted to laugh, but she just said lightly, "I sensed that you were calling me, so I came." She stood there and asked again, "What do you want to say to me?" When she smelled it, Chao Zhihe remembered his own matter. He pursed his lips and told her what had happened today. Finally, he pouted and said, "I know I made Mom and Dad worried. I also apologized, but they still ignored me. At the end of his speech, Gu Shengyin looked at the little man and her eyes turned red. However, she forced herself not to let her tears fall. Qiao Zhihe told himself that his father had said that a man should not cry easily. He had to protect his mother. This kind of sensible and cute child was the most lovable, not to mention that Gu Shengyin was biased towards Qiao Zhihe. She thought for a moment and said, "Don't be sad. Your parents will come to say good morning to you tomorrow." Qiao Zhihe's eyes lit up. "Really?" Gu Shengyin said with certainty, "Of course it's true." She had just heard Qiao Zhihe's mother say it herself. The expression on Qiao Zhihe's face relaxed a little, but he still looked a little unhappy. Gu Shengyin looked at his rare appearance. She thought for a moment and had an idea. "Little Crane, are you willing to play a game with me?" Chapter 1398. Qiao Zhihe's eyes widened as he looked at the scenery below him. This was a beauty he had never imagined. If someone used a telescope to take a picture of the sky at this time, they might be able to see a little boy floating in the sky in a strange posture, looking at the scenery below. It was like a dream. Qiao Zhihe still remembered that after Sister Death asked that question, he did not hesitate to put his hand in her gloved palm. Then, he noticed that he was being carried and left the ground. Yes, leave. He looked up and could only see the darkness under the heavy hood. When he looked up a little higher, he could see the beautiful black wings behind Sister Death. He was now in the sky. Every little boy would have a dream about flying when he was young. This was different from sitting on a plane. It was not sitting in a closed cabin, but standing in the air. He could reach out his hand and feel the wind gently caressing his body. He could also look down and see the lights of thousands of homes below him. Qiao Zhihe's face was full of amazement. Gu Shengyin looked at him softly and asked, "Do you feel better now?" Qiao Zhihe nodded vigorously. He was so excited that his heart was about to jump out. Gu Shengyin took him and slowly soared in the sky. They flew for almost 2 hours. Qiao Zhihe never knew that the city he lived in looked like this from above. In the end, the child was sent home by Gu Shengyin. Facing the little prince's eyes, Gu Shengyin ruthlessly refused him. "You should sleep now. Otherwise, Mom and Dad will scold you when they see your dark circles tomorrow." Well, hearing the unquestionable tone in Sister Death's voice, Qiao Zhihe could only obediently nod. Then he heard a cold good night by his ear, and the person beside him disappeared. She really is the mysterious Sister Death, Qiao Zhihe thought. The next day, when Mother Qiao opened the door of her son's room, she saw 2 big dark circles. Gu Shengyin did not think of this. After experiencing such an exciting night, how many normal people could sleep? Not to mention the 7-year-old Qiao Zhihe. Qiao Zhihe was worried that he would be scolded by his mother. However, Mrs. Qiao clearly misunderstood. She thought that her son was unable to sleep because he had been taught a lesson last night. For a moment, her heart ached and she blamed herself. She hugged Qiao Zhihe and rubbed his heart. Qiao Zhihe was carried by his mother with a confused look on his face. Clearly, he did not understand the situation at all. But as a man, he had to take responsibility for his mistakes. That was what Sister Death had told him. Therefore, Qiao Zhihe patted her chest and said to her mother that she really knew that she was wrong. She would never do such a dangerous thing again. When Mother Qiao saw that her son still didn't forget to admit his mistake, she felt both bitter and proud. From then on, he doted on his son even more. After playing with Qiao Zhihe for a day, Gu Shengyin returned to the underworld. The system told her that He Qing's next plan was to go skiing in the snowy mountains of Shibua. Anyway, this woman's hobby was always adventurous and exciting. Gu Shengyin was not surprised. The last time she went to see He Qing, she didn't find anything out of the ordinary other than having a lot of merit. She slowly relaxed. Chapter 1399. Gu Shengyin thought that she should stay far away from this woman. Stay far away from her. If He Qing couldn't find her, she couldn't possibly set her sights on her, right? He Qing went skiing. With her financial resources, she naturally booked the entire place. Gu Shengyin tried it. She used a small trick to cause a slight avalanche. She just wanted to see just how good He Qing's life was. The result didn't disappoint her at all. If an ordinary person encountered that avalanche, the chances of dying would be more than 80%. However, He Qing didn't even suffer a fracture. It was because of the cold that she caught a small cold. She didn't even have a fever. She could be fine after drinking a cup of water and taking a pill. Gu Shengyin, on the other hand, felt a sense of oppression from the unseen world. This was a warning from the heavenly Tao. As the god of death, she just had to do her job well. She smiled bitterly. In the end, she gave up on the idea of doing something in the dark. In terms of duties, Gu Shengyin wasn't busy. There were many gods of death like her in the underworld. Each person only needed to be in charge of a specific area. In this case, the workload wasn't huge. Therefore, sometimes, she might have to guide many people in a day. Sometimes, no one died for several days. Sometimes, Qiao Zhihe would call for her. If she was free, she would go and see her little prince. Gu Shengyin had never interacted with her lover like this. She had been his sister, his disciple, his master, and even his nurturer. But she had never appeared in his life as an idol-like existence like now. To the current Qiao Zhihe, Sister Death was a mysterious and intimate god. She was very powerful and knew many things that he couldn't even imagine. Although she looked cold, she would try her best to satisfy his every request. Qiao Zhihe felt that Sister Death was much more powerful than those so-called superheroes in the movies. However, she seemed to be very busy and only had time to visit him occasionally. Qiao Zhihe had once asked if Sister Death was busy saving the world like the superheroes in the movies. His words almost made Gu Shengyin laugh. Her tone was as cold as ever. "Little Crane, you can go look for some information. We Grim Reapers are not heroes. We are the exact opposite of the popular superheroes. Humans hate Grim Reapers the most. Because our appearance can only mean death." She didn't say much, but the little Qiao Zhihe remembered her words in his heart. When he grew up and learned to think independently, he slowly searched for information about the Grim Reaper. This information also allowed him to understand his big sister Death better. The Grim Reaper was a deity of the underworld. They wore black cloaks and black gloves. Their entire bodies were shrouded in darkness. No one could see their faces. The black scythe was a divine weapon for harvesting souls. Their appearance represented death. Those who could see the Grim Reaper were all souls that were about to enter the underworld. Qiao Zhihe started to feel a little puzzled when he read to the end. All the information stated that mortals could not see the Grim Reaper. Only those who were about to die could see it. But he could see Sister Death all the time. Chapter 1400. If only someone who was about to die could see Sister Death, then he had been dead for many years. Qiao Zhihe shook his head and didn't take it seriously. He was vaguely curious about another matter. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. This year, Qiao Zhihe was 14 years old and had reached the age of first awakening of love. This year, He Qing was 28 years old and was still playing around in the human world. Gu Shengyin had been in this world for 7 years. She had completely adapted to today's life. While paying attention to He Qing's movements, she would occasionally visit Qiao Zhihe. Most of the time, she was bringing the souls of the dead back and forth between the worlds of the living and the dead. The system couldn't help but sigh. This was really the most dedicated world for the host. Wasn't it dedication? Gu Shengyin had completed the work of the death god perfectly. But Gu Shengyin actually felt stifled. Sometimes, when she looked at He Qing, she wished she could kill her with her own hands. This woman, if not for her great fortune in her previous life, she would have died countless times in this life. She had no morals at all. Gu Shengyin stayed by her side and watched as she forced the handsome young men she fancied to submit to her. He watched as her private life was messy, and he watched as she did some shady things in private. She even injected drugs into an innocent person with her own hands. She couldn't stop it, because the death god couldn't care about the affairs of the human world. She had tried many times to send the evidence to the police. The evidence was enough to send anyone to prison for 8 to 10 years. But it was useless. When the evidence was sent to the police, it either became a stack of white paper with nothing on it, or it became fake. Gu Shengyin then knew that He Qing really couldn't be brought down in this life. She unscrupulously enjoyed the good fortune left behind by her previous life, and in the next life, she had to bear the sins of this life. Was this fair? It wasn't. But what could Gu Shengyin say? She was just a death god who relied on this world's heavenly axiom to survive. She couldn't get out of this situation. Gu Shengyin sometimes wanted to avoid it, but she couldn't help it. Even if she couldn't do anything, she wanted to watch and remember. There would always be one person who would silently witness all the sins that this woman had committed. He would remember them all. The 14th birthday of the Chow family's young master was held in the Chow family's villa. The Chow family didn't publicize the news, but they knew what they needed to know. He was the only son of the Chow family's third generation and the future head of the Chow family. Such an identity was very precious. However, Chow Zhihe seemed a little absent-minded the entire day. The meticulous Chow Mu looked at her son and quietly pulled him to the side. "What's wrong, Xiao He? You seem to have something on your mind." Chow Zhihe showed a gentle smile. "Mom, you worry too much." "I'm fine." His smile was very clean, like the most dazzling warm sun in early spring. It was said that the young master of the Chow family had inherited all the advantages of his parents' looks. When he grew up, he would be amazing. Chow Mu looked at her son and couldn't help but feel proud. After waiting for the banquet to end and the guests to leave, Chow Zhihe used the excuse that he was tired and wanted to rest. He then returned to his room. Sister Death God is back, right? She would remember her birthday every year. Chapter 1401. Chow Zhihe sat on the bed, waiting for Gu Shengyin's arrival. He was even thinking about what gift Sister Death would bring him. Just as he lowered his head to think, a cold wind blew, and Chow Zhihe raised his head happily. Sister Death. He still didn't know Gu Shengyin's name, so he had always called her Sister Death. The wide black cloak quietly fell to the ground, and the pure black scythe was cold and sharp. But Chow Zhihe wasn't afraid at all. He knew that this person wouldn't hurt him. Gu Shengyin gently opened her hand, and a dark red light rose from her palm, slowly flying in front of Chow Zhihe. After the red light faded, its original appearance was revealed. It was a droplet-shaped red crystal, about the size of a thumb, reflecting a beautiful luster under the light. "Happy birthday, little crane," Gu Shengyin said softly. Chow Zhihe put this beautiful stone under his pillow very carefully. Gu Shengyin said, "This thing can protect your safety at a critical moment." She thought for a moment, moved her hands, and the stone under Chow Zhihe's pillow returned to her hands. But at this time, there was an extra red line on the stone. "Lower your head," Gu Shengyin said. Chow Zhihe immediately understood what she wanted to do. He lowered his head obediently. A 14-year-old boy was no shorter than death. But Chow Zhihe was very curious. The hood clearly didn't completely cover Sister Death's face, but why couldn't he see it clearly? He suddenly raised his head. The two were very close, and Gu Shengyin's hand was still on his neck. From afar, the two looked like they were hugging. At such a close distance, Chow Zhihe could only see a beautiful pale chin. His heart moved, and he wanted to do something, but Gu Shengyin had already let go of his hand and took a step back. For some reason, Chow Zhihe's heart suddenly surged with disappointment. He didn't even know where this disappointment came from. Gu Shengyin looked at him quietly. "You are unhappy." Chow Zhihe froze for a moment. Was he unhappy? What was he unhappy about? Gu Shengyin looked at his blank face and sighed in her heart. She just thought that it was a change in the temperament of an adolescent child. She looked at him and suddenly said, "Today is your birthday. I'll grant you a wish, okay? Chao Jihe's eyes lit up as the faint anticipation in his heart began to stir. Gu Shengyin saw the child in front of her looking at her with bright eyes. Sister Death, can you promise me 2 things? Gu Shengyin shook her head slightly. He stretched out a finger. Her meaning was very clear. She could only agree to one request. Chao Jihe hesitated for a moment and said, Then can you pull down your hood and let me see what you look like? He had known Death since he was 7 years old. But until the age of 14, other than calling her big sister Death, he didn't even know her name or what she looked like. Gu Shengyin was stunned. She didn't expect that Chao Jihe would make such a request. Seeing that she didn't move for a long time, Chao Jihe couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Sister Death. When he shouted this, there was a coquettish tone in his voice that even he didn't notice. Chapter 1402. Only in front of people who were extremely close to him would the gentle and polite young master of the Chao family show a trace of childishness. Gu Shengyin had no resistance to Chao Jihe at all. She hesitated for a moment, and finally, under the child's burning gaze, she stretched out her hand and pulled down the hood on her head. Chao Jihe's eyes widened. The moment the hood was pulled down, silver-gray hair flowed down like a waterfall. And Chao Jihe's eyes were tightly held by the person in front of him. Gray hair, gray eyes, obviously different from a human's appearance. But on her, it didn't feel out of place at all. The Death in front of him had a delicate face that was difficult to describe with a brush, but at the same time, because of the bloodless face and overly pale lips, this delicate face had a hint of fragility. Of course, this fragility was indeed just a look, and no one dared to underestimate the sickle of the Death. Chao Jihe looked at this person without blinking. Since he was 7 years old, he had been fantasizing about the appearance of Sister Death in his mind. He once wondered if the other party would be like the description in fairy tales. A skeleton? Perhaps a strange creature that looked completely different from a human, or a beautiful female god. When he really saw her face, he thought, so this is what Sister Death looks like. That's right, Sister Death should look like this. He stared blankly until the other party's gaze looked over. It was almost a cold gaze, but after 7 years of living with the Death in front of him, Chao Jihe's cold heart was actually very soft. Chao Jihe's gentle face suddenly burst into a very bright smile. His bright eyes gazed at Gu Shengyin and almost said in an excited tone, Sister Death, you're really beautiful. Gu Shengyin heard this and didn't have any reaction. She only stretched out her hand and pulled back the hood that had just fallen down. Once again, her stunning appearance was completely covered. Appearance, for me, is just a skin. Her cold voice came from the cloak. Chao Jihe glanced at the black hood with some regret. Hearing her words, he couldn't help but laugh, but to many humans, beautiful skin is their lifelong pursuit. Gu Shengyin didn't debate with Chao Jihe on this issue. The record book in her hand suddenly lit up, which meant that she had something to do. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. You should rest early. Her cold voice sounded in the room. Chao Jihe opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but the other party had disappeared. He looked at the place where the other party stood before, and stared blankly for a while, and suddenly laughed again. Lowering his head, Chao Jihe grabbed the red crystal in the shape of a water droplet. I don't know what it is, but for Sister Death to treat it so seriously, it should be something very important, right? He sat there and thought silently for a while. Feeling a little sleepy, he fell asleep in a daze. Chao Jihe felt very hot. Every cell in his body was clamoring, and there seemed to be a fire burning in the depths of his body. He needed something to quench his thirst, to relieve the restlessness that was everywhere. Suddenly, a cold arm reached out from beside him. It's over. Thank you to all the people who voted for Gigi and gave her tips. Thank you very much, even though I still lost in the PK. After that, it would be 8 every day as usual. Chapter 1403. The eldest daughter, who was holding old Master Zhang's hand, saw him nod, but she didn't understand what he meant. The next moment, old Master Zhang found that he could speak. His body seemed to have returned to when he was young. However, he remembered the words of the black figure just now. He only had 10 minutes left. Although he really wanted to scold these ingrates that he had raised, he obviously had more important things to do at this moment. Old Master Zhang looked at the man standing at the side. "Lawyer Qi, I have something to ask of you." His lawyer quickly walked over. Everyone in the room was amazed. Just now, this old man looked like he was about to die. They didn't expect him to suddenly wake up. However, some people guessed that it might be the final radiance of the setting sun. Old Master Zhang glanced into the room. He was worried that these three good-for-nothings would come back and cause trouble later, so he told them to all leave. His three children looked a little uneasy, but under the gazes of others, they didn't dare to do anything. They could only walk out. When the room quieted down, old Master Zhang looked at the lawyer beside him. "Lawyer Qi, please draft a new will for me." About 8 minutes later, Lawyer Qi walked out with a serious expression. He looked at old Master Zhang's children without leaving a trace. Then, he turned around. "Old Master Zhang, Everyone, go in and see him for the last time." Everyone hurried into the room. Sure enough, they saw that old Master Zhang, who was still in high spirits just now, had started to turn green. It was obvious that he had reached the last step. Old Master Zhang forced his eyes open. He looked at his three children and smiled. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he closed his eyes weakly. "Dad! Dad!" The three of them started crying when old Master Zhang closed his eyes. The guests at the side all said that old Master Zhang had enjoyed enough good fortune in this life to have 3 filial children. Old Master Zhang, who was lying on the bed, was now standing beside Gu Shengyin. He looked at his slightly transparent body with curiosity, then looked at his old body on the bed. "Aren't you sad?" A cold voice sounded in his ear. Turning around to look at the grim reaper beside him, old man Zhang laughed. "What am I sad about? I've already enjoyed everything that I should have in this world. The last few days were even a little painful. After I died, I felt a sense of relief and strength that I had not felt for a long time. Furthermore, before he died, he even took revenge for her, didn't he?" "Then come with me," Gu Shengyin said faintly and turned to leave. Old man Zhang followed behind her and asked, "Can I see the fate of my 3 evil creatures before I leave?" Gu Shengyin paused for a moment, then stretched out a hand and pointed at the void. Old Master Zhang saw what was about to happen. At the end of his funeral, before all the guests had left, Lawyer Qi announced the will he had made before his death. All the assets under his name had been donated to welfare organizations, leaving nothing for his children. His 3 daughters naturally refused to believe it. They had planned for so long and even done such a thing. Wasn't it all for this wealth? Lawyer Qi's expression didn't change at all when someone pointed at his nose and accused him of tampering with the will. Apart from the will, old Master Zhang also suspects that his death is related to Miss Zhang and the 2 Mr. Zhangs. "I've already called the police. The police will talk to the 3 of you later." Old Master Zhang watched in silence and didn't say anything else. He followed Gu Shengyin into the underworld. Chapter 1404. Recently, He Qing felt that her spring had come. The 30-year-old woman felt that her heart, which had never been moved before, was beating because of a man. She had met that man in a surfing competition. He was tall and strong, and he was also very good-looking. After a while, the 2 of them successfully hooked up in bed. It was originally a consensual adult game, but He Qing felt that she was getting more and more immersed in it. With her personality, she would never allow herself to be taken advantage of. Since she had taken a fancy to him, he was naturally hers. That man had a family, and he was not willing to break up his family because of a casual relationship. He Qing agreed on the surface, but the next moment, she began to secretly find someone to deal with his wife. Her methods were very rough. Since you can't bear to part with your wife, just make her disappear. She found someone to create an accident when the man's wife got off work. Gu Shengyin saw a faint gray aura on the poor woman. That was the color of the dead. In other words, He Qing's plan would succeed. The woman would die in a traffic accident today, and the driver would have to compensate a large sum of money. But what he could get from He Qing was far more than that. When the car with a faulty brake hit the woman, Gu Shengyin's hand moved in her sleeve. The woman only felt that there was a force pushing her, and she fell to the side. Before she could understand what had happened, she saw a car whizzing past her. At such a speed, if it hit her, she would have no chance of survival. There was no one beside her, but at that moment, she did feel a force acting on her body. The woman thought for a while, put her hands together and prayed to the heavens, and continued to walk forward. Gu Shengyin heard the sound of thunder. Her body suddenly stiffened, and then she squatted down in pain. Except for her, no one else heard this sound. The heavenly Tao of this world warned her that if there was a next time, there would be no mercy. When the sudden pain in her body gradually disappeared, Gu Shengyin stood up expressionlessly. She found the so-called heavenly Tao of this world laughable. In this life, He Qing had committed countless evil deeds, but because of her so-called merits in her previous life, she was able to live a wealthy and stable life until she was old. What did that woman do wrong? Her husband cheated on her, and the woman who intervened in her marriage wanted her life. However, the heavenly Tao did not care about this. It did not even allow others to care about it. Was this the so-called fate? Gu Shengyin looked at the woman from afar and found that the gray color on her body did not decrease. She lowered her eyes. She knew in her heart that that woman would not live past tonight. Even if she avoided the car accident, the woman would die in another accident. As expected, when it was close to dawn, the record book in Gu Shengyin's hand glowed faintly. Seeing the familiar name, Gu Shengyin pursed her lips. She walked into a small alley and saw a woman who had been stabbed several times and was lying in a pool of blood. Her soul was floating in mid-air, staring blankly at her own body. Your days in the human world have come to an end. Come with me. A cold voice came from beside her. The woman turned her head and saw death standing beside her. Chapter 1405. Death God? The woman looked at Gu Shengyin and guessed her identity. Gu Shengyin didn't say anything. The woman continued, "Are you here to take me away?" Gu Shengyin nodded, "I'll take your soul to the underworld." The woman didn't say anything and prepared to leave with Gu Shengyin. There wasn't even a hint of reluctance on her face. Gu Shengyin felt a bit strange, but as a death god, she shouldn't care too much about these things. Until the door to the underworld opened and the woman was about to walk in, she suddenly smiled at her. "When we were on the road, it was you, right? I sensed your presence." That cold feeling was the same as now. The woman looked at Gu Shengyin and smiled. "Thank you." Gu Shengyin didn't say anything and watched the woman walk in. The expression on her face disappeared and she became silent. She suddenly felt a bit annoyed with her mission. If only she didn't know anything. But even though she knew everything, she couldn't do anything. She could only watch as the people who deserved to die lived freely, while the innocent met a tragic end because of their so-called fate. She finally understood why the death god didn't have any emotions and was cold. Only without any emotions could she coldly look at all the unfair things in the world. For the gods, a human's life, a few decades, was just a blink of an eye. And everything had a cycle. She lived a miserable life in this life, but she might be able to live a good life in the next. There was nothing to be conflicted about. But Gu Shengyin couldn't do it. She raised her head and looked at the eternal gray sky of the underworld. She actually had the urge to escape. Ding! Detected that the host has negative emotions. Please adjust your emotions as soon as possible. Please adjust your emotions as soon as possible and complete the mission with a positive heart. The system's voice sounded in her ears. Gu Shengyin came back to her senses and said calmly, "I know. But no matter if I'm positive or negative, I'll just hide far away and watch He Qing live out her life in glory, right?" The system. It seemed to be true, and it had nothing to say. Seeing that the system had fallen silent because of her words, Gu Shengyin thought for a moment and said, "However, I can slowly observe and see what will happen to her in her next life, right?" The system perked up. "Yes, host." Originally, according to the merit accumulated from the mission, as long as she did not seek death, she could have lived a wealthy life for more than 3 generations. However, she had committed so many sins in her life that these merits could not even make up for her sins. In her next life, her life will definitely be very miserable. Whether or not she can be reincarnated into a human is another matter. Gu Shengyin nodded and did not say anything else. At this moment, the man and the system both thought that this world's mission would be completed just like that. However, there was nothing definite about fate. He Qing was with that man. After the man's wife died, he was depressed for a period of time. It was rare for He Qing to chase away all the women around her and put down her hobby of adventuring to focus on staying by his side. She was such a beautiful woman, and she was doing her best for him. Anyone could see that she had feelings for him. Not many men would be able to reject such luck. Chapter 1406. That man and He Qing naturally got together. Gu Shengyin watched coldly from the side. He Qing seemed to have really fallen for him this time. When she was with this man, she didn't go to places like nightclubs and send all her lovers away. She was really like an ordinary woman, accompanying that man. The two of them lived a very happy life. For some reason, looking at He Qing like this, Gu Shengyin was relieved. It was a good thing that she could settle down and stop doing evil. But one day, Gu Shengyin saw that man's name in her record book. Usually, the Grim Reaper wouldn't take the initiative to flip through the record book unless the name on it lit up. And when the name lit up, it meant that that person was about to die. That man's name hadn't lit up yet, but his name appeared on the first 3 pages of Gu Shengyin's record book. Usually, the Grim Reaper wouldn't look at the names on these pages because it was troublesome. Anyway, what they needed to do was to take those names to the underworld when they lit up. Those who were on the first 3 pages would be rotated down in order. It meant that those who were about to die were not under their control. Gu Shengyin took a look under the system's reminder and found the man's name. He had cancer. It was in the late stage. He only had 4 months left to live. Gu Shengyin almost immediately thought of He Qing's reaction. That crazy woman wouldn't do anything, would she? Her premonition was very accurate. That man said that he wasn't feeling well. At first, they thought that it was a small illness. After He Qing insisted on going to the hospital for a checkup, the results made them despair. The hospital that examined the man said that there was no way. The cancer had spread and couldn't be treated. He Qing didn't believe it. She took the man to the most famous hospitals in the country, but the results were the same. After that, they went abroad. But for such a disease, even the best hospital and the best doctor couldn't do anything. Gu Shengyin was inexplicably worried. She had known He Qing's character for so long and knew it well. If this woman really went crazy, it was terrifying. After confirming that there was no other way, the two of them returned home. Perhaps He Qing's efforts during this period of time had paid off. That man also had good feelings for her. Seeing her like this, he even comforted her. "It's okay, Qing Qing. I'm fine now." He Qing just quietly leaned her head against the man's chest. "I won't let you die, no matter what the price is." Since there was no other way with technology, they would have to resort to extreme measures. He Qing began to visit the famous feng shui masters in the hall to see if she could find a way to extend her life. Most of the masters didn't even want to look at her when they saw the sins she had accumulated in her life. People like them knew more about certain things, and the most taboo thing was to be tainted with karma and sin. He was also tempted by He Qing's offer, but after seeing the man's condition, he shook his head. An old man said to He Qing, "You're too late. If I had discovered it earlier, I could have thought of a way to prolong his life. But now, his name has already been recorded in the Grim Reaper's record book. There's no other way." "Grim Reaper?" He Qing asked in confusion. Wasn't that a god from the myths and legends? Did it really exist? Chapter 1407. Seeing that she was interested, the old man told He Ching some of the things he knew. After that, he shook his head and said, "Madam, you should go back and spend more time with your husband. Forgive me for not being able to help." He Ching left without saying anything. When she returned home, the man was sitting on the balcony in his home clothes, basking in the sun. The pain of his illness made his body thin rapidly. Now, he was no longer as handsome as He Ching liked. If it was in the past, He Ching would have given up on such a lover. But this person was different. She was obsessed with him like crazy and wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. The Grim Reaper? In this world, there was nothing that money could not buy. In just a few days, some information about the Grim Reaper appeared in front of her. He Ching read word by word and finally understood what those masters meant. Those who were on the Grim Reaper's record book were destined to die. No one could save such a person, unless the Grim Reaper was willing to go against the heavenly Tao for him. However, the Grim Reaper was a god who walked between the human world and the underworld. She had always been selfless. How could she go against the heavenly Tao for an ordinary human? He Ching was in despair for a moment. But she wanted to see the so-called Grim Reaper. Once again, she disturbed the master and voiced out her thoughts. "You want to see the Grim Reaper?" The master's expression changed. What a joke. What did the Grim Reaper represent? A living person would not see the Grim Reaper. This was the rule for thousands of years. He felt that he had not lived long enough. He Ching was not surprised at the master's rejection. She smiled coldly and said, "Master Du, your grandson who is in kindergarten is playing in my house now. He is waiting for Grandpa to bring him home." Master Du's expression changed when he heard that. In his line of work, it had always been difficult to have children. His grandson was the only son left behind by his son who had an accident. He Ching threatened him with this and he had no room to reject her. Master Du regretted it now. He Ching was a lunatic. He should have rejected her when she came to find him. But it was too late now. She had her eyes on him. Master Du said coldly, "In that case, I'll go with you." He Ching smiled, "Thank you, Master Du. When I meet the Grim Reaper, I will naturally send your grandson back." Master Du said in a deep voice, "But let me make it clear first. A living person can't see the Grim Reaper. Madam He, don't lose your luck. Furthermore, this old man can only give it a try. Whether or not the Grim Reaper is willing to show himself, this old man cannot guarantee." He Ching was non-committal and said faintly, "Master Du doesn't need to worry about this." She didn't know that her every move had long been known by others. Gu Shengyin had no intention of meeting her at all. She thought for a moment. It had been a few months since she last saw Qiao Zhihe. She wondered how little Crane was doing. Qiao Zhihe was painting in his room. Now, he was already 17 years old. His figure had already matured, and his handsome face always carried a faint smile. Anyone who saw him would praise him for being such a handsome child. At this moment, a delicate rose was blooming under his brush. The flower was as red as fire, and its unrestrained passion seemed to pour out from the paper. Chapter 1408. The young master of the Qiao family didn't study financial management, but chose art. When Qiao Zhihe said his intention, he was opposed by his family. But in the end, Father Qiao and Mother Qiao couldn't persuade their son. It was useless to force them, as long as their son was happy. A gust of cold wind came from the open window, and Qiao Zhihe's gentle eyes showed a touch of surprise. "Death Sister." Sure enough, when he turned around, a familiar figure appeared in his room. He had always called her Death Sister, because he once asked Gu Shengyin for her name, but Gu Shengyin didn't tell him. The name of a god was like a spell, and must not be told to others easily. But Gu Shengyin didn't tell Qiao Zhihe because she didn't know the name of the original body. The original body seemed to be the death god from the beginning of her memories, and humans also called her death god. She didn't have a name. Naturally, she couldn't tell Qiao Zhihe what her name was. Gu Shengyin looked at the cluster of gorgeous roses on the drawing paper and praised, "Very beautiful." Qiao Zhihe heard this and laughed. Gu Shengyin looked at him and wanted to say something, but suddenly her face changed. She seemed to see something on Qiao Zhihe's body. Her heart moved, and the record book in her hand automatically flipped, and on the third page, the 3 words Qiao Zhihe appeared. How could this be? Gu Shengyin stared at the name on the book, and her heart was full of confusion and shock. Death Sister. Death Sister? Qiao Zhihe called her several times before she came back to her senses. Gu Shengyin came back to her senses and saw Qiao Zhihe. For a moment, she didn't want to face this lively face. She hurriedly said, "Something came up, see you next time." Before her voice fell, she had already disappeared from the room. Qiao Zhihe's smile froze on his face. The corners of his lips slowly relaxed, and he felt his heart suddenly become empty. She was a god, and he was a mortal. That was someone she would never be able to catch in her life. Qiao Zhihe slowly returned to the front of the table and picked up the brush again. He slowly added the remaining colors to the flame-like roses. It was just that the enthusiasm that seemed to surge out seemed to have faded a lot. Gu Shengyin flew to the top of the mountain alone. She moved her left hand and finally flipped open the record book. She clearly saw a line of words on it. Qiao Zhihe, male, 17 years old, died in a car accident on July 14, 2330. The 14th of July, the day when the gates of hell would open, was just 2 months away. Why couldn't she understand? Why was there no news about Qiao Zhihe in her record book? Why did such words suddenly appear? It was impossible for the Grim Reaper's record book to be wrong. That was, Qiao Zhihe would indeed die in 2 months. Gu Shengyin sat at the top of the mountain for an entire night. The next day, she became the cold Grim Reaper again. The system said, "Host, don't be sad." Gu Shengyin felt strange and asked, "Why would I be sad?" The system said, "Your lover is about to die in this world, but host, you will meet again in the next world, so..." Gu Shengyin continued the system's words, "So I'm not sad, don't worry." The system didn't say anything else. Even if they were lovers, if the child they watched grow up was about to die, they would also feel uncomfortable, right? Was she really not sad? Not necessarily, right? Chapter 1409. After a few days, Gu Shengyin went to see Qiao Zhihe again. The 17-year-old little Nian wore a white shirt. He was so clean that he looked like a handsome young man from a manga. When he saw Gu Shengyin, Qiao Zhihe was delighted. He showed his latest painting to Gu Shengyin. It was a bunch of sunflowers that bloomed in the sun. Gu Shengyin looked at the painting for a long time. Qiao Zhihe's painting looked a little different from his person. No matter who saw this young man, they would think that he was the kind of gentleman described in the books. But in his painting, there was no such temperament at all. Instead, it was very passionate and unrestrained, as if he was always pursuing something tirelessly. He was a very talented painter. Not only Gu Shengyin thought so, but many old seniors in the painting world also thought highly of this young junior. Even Qiao Zhihe's parents, after seeing the talent that their son showed, never asked him to go into business again. Such a pure artistic soul was born to paint. "It's a beautiful painting," Gu Shengyin praised. Qiao Zhihe heard his praise, and his eyes showed a deep smile. Gu Shengyin turned to look at him. The young man had a vibrant smile, and his smile could easily infect others. She suddenly had a desire to confide in him. "Little he, do you want to take a walk in the mountains with me?" she asked. Qiao Zhihe nodded. In fact, as long as he was with Sister Death, he was willing to go anywhere. Gu Shengyin reached out to him. Qiao Zhihe's eyebrows trembled, and then he reached out his slender hand and gently put it on the black glove. A cold feeling passed through the glove. Sister Death's body was always so cold, just like Chao Zhihe turned his head and looked at Death, who was always hidden in the hood. It was as if Sister Death's entire divine spirit gave people the feeling. His body flew up lightly. Chao Zhihe floated in the void and looked at the lights below his feet. He was no stranger to such experiences. But no matter how many times he experienced it, he still held the same anticipation and joy. Because it was only at this time that he could get so close to Sister Death. Gu Shengyin really took him to a mountain. On a summer night, the heat of the day had faded away. Coupled with the cool breeze at the top of the mountain, it was very refreshing. Chao Zhihe looked around. It was very dark, and the only light was the brilliant lights in the distance. That was the city he lived in. From such a distance, he could only see an endless belt of light. Seeing him subconsciously approach her, Gu Shengyin thought that Chao Zhihe did not dare to approach her because it was too dark. She thought for a moment, and her divine sense moved slightly. In an instant, countless tiny specks of light rose from the forest and wandered around the two of them. Although these lights were weak, when combined together, they still illuminated the place. Chao Zhihe's eyes widened. He looked at the sky full of fireflies in shock and was speechless for a long time. He had never seen such a beautiful scene. He turned sideways and saw that the cloak on the head of the person beside him had been taken off, and the black sickle in her hand had disappeared without a trace. Sister Death. His face was a little red. But Gu Shengyin only thought that he was excited because of the beautiful scene in front of him. 8 o'clock. It's the end of the month, the last 3 days of the month. If you have votes, please vote for Gao Langji. Gao Langji is currently 5th in the monthly votes, only 6 or 7 votes away from 6th. Chapter 14:10. She knew very well that those in the art industry were obsessed with the pursuit of beauty. When Chao Zhihe saw Gu Shengyin's face, the surging emotions in his heart were knocked back by a basin of cold water. Seeing that the other party did not ask him, he took back the words that were about to come out of his mouth. The two sat quietly like this, with the dancing fireflies beside them. When they looked up, there were bright stars. Gu Shengyin suddenly fell back and lay in the grass. Chao Zhihe looked at her with some surprise. In his mind, Sister Death's words and deeds were like the most rigorous dogma training. Every move, even the posture of standing, was very strict. This was the first time he had seen her act so carelessly. But at the same time, a secret delight rose in his heart because of this. Sister Grim Reaper seemed to be more humane like this. He imitated Gu Shengyin's action, using his hands as a pillow and lying down on the grass. Looking at the sky like this, it was completely impossible to distinguish which were fireflies and which were stars. Gu Shengyin suddenly spoke, "I don't remember how many years I have been deaf, and I don't remember how many souls have entered the underworld from my hands." Chao Zhihe did not understand what she wanted to express, but he could see that Gu Shengyin wanted to talk to someone. Therefore, he did not interrupt or ask any questions. Instead, he listened to her quietly. Gu Shengyin's cold voice was like a clear spring flowing slowly in such a summer night, which could easily soothe the last trace of heat in people's hearts. "You are the only one who can see me as a living person." Chao Zhihe couldn't help but smile. To Sister Death, he was also a very special existence. This recognition made him very happy. "I have seen all kinds of people facing death. Little Crane, let me ask you a question." Chao Zhihe focused his attention. "What's the question, Sister Death?" Gu Shengyin heard her own calm voice. "If you knew that you were about to die one day, what would you think?" Her voice was too calm, so calm that it made Chao Zhihe think that she really just wanted to ask a question on a whim. He thought about it very seriously, and finally said, "I might be very unwilling, right?" Gu Shengyin repeated, "Unwilling? Yeah." Chao Zhihe smiled and said, "I'm only 17 years old. My dream is to become a famous painter. I've just started walking on this path, and I haven't proven to my parents that I've made the right choice. My parents only have one son, and if I die, they will be very sad. I haven't." He suddenly stopped talking. Finally he said, I still want to live for a long, long time. Gu Shengyin just listened quietly. She heard that Qiao Zhihe still had some unfinished words, but that should be a little secret of a teenager, so she did not ask. Qiao Zhihe softly said the words that he didn't say out loud in his heart. I haven't confessed to the person I like yet, and I probably won't confess to her either. But I will try my best to live for a long, long time so that I can spend more time with her. Gu Shengyin turned her head and looked at the young man's bright eyes under the light of the fireflies, which were full of vigor and vitality. Such a young man's life would end in 2 months. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.